Welcome to Grounded, a backyard where you are the size of an ant, grass towers over you, and literally everything wants to eat you. In this 100-day journey, I'll face overwhelming odds, battle swarms of bugs, conquer epic bosses, build creative bases, craft essential tools, and explore everything the yard has to offer. Ultimately, I'll seek to unravel the mystery behind our transformation. Who did this to us? Why? And most importantly, is there a way back? Will I find a way to go big? Or will I become just another snack for the bugs that call this yard home? This is 100 Days in Grounded. Waking up on day one, I was in a daze. It was like my college days. Having no idea of how I got here, I just know I was somewhere I wasn't supposed to be. Armed with the confidence of someone who's seen way too many survival documentaries, I began hoarding anything that looked useful, plant fibers, sprigs, and the occasional pebble, which I'm pretty sure would have been skipping stones in my former life. Continuing my expedition, I found a small white and blue hut that looked hilariously out of place in this grassy wilderness. Upon entering, I discovered it was a resource analyzer. Every item I scanned sent an electric drop of knowledge directly into my brain. Smart guy move, I know. But there was a catch. 3 scans and the machine needed a coffee break. I then proudly crafted some crude rope and my very first tool, the pebblet axe. That is when I discovered a giant piece of mysterious technology. And nearby I found some clovers, perfect for crafting a cozy little bed. As I pondered my interior design future, there was an ant crossing which led me to a weevil, a creature with the ferocity of a potato. First victim of the playthrough, secured. Feeling pretty accomplished, I pressed a flashing button on a nearby bathroom scale. I know, weird, which triggered an update to my quest log. One of the lasers powering this contraption wasn't working properly though, and I realized a blade of grass was blocking the beam. So naturally I chopped it down and killed a weevil in the process. Sorry buddy, you were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Returning to the resource analyzer, I scanned a grass plank and that allowed me to make armor that would fail in both fashion and protection. But hey, it was better than nothing. I then scanned sap and crafted the much needed torch. Torch in hand, I ventured into a cave below the malfunctioning laser, and the lawn lights were gnawing away at the wires. My pellet spear made quick work of them, though they were small and annoying and constantly nipping at my feet. Along the way, I peeped my first creature. Peeping is essentially taking a nature selfie, except you get valuable info on a creature's strengths and weaknesses. Then I smashed through a boulder wall and discovered a hidden cave section where a strange, unreachable grub lurks underground. I also snagged a Scavenging, a collectible that lets you change the color scheme of your menu. Naturally, I was going to opt for something stylish. After all that excitement, I was parched. Dehydration loomed over me like a bad life choice. But just as I thought my microscopic adventure was coming to a tragic end, I spotted a perfect drop of juice waiting to revitalize me. After indulging myself, I was back in business. Crisis had been averted. However, I quickly realized after I quenched my thirst that I had made a rookie move. Instead of returning to the bathroom scale to finish the laser quest, I had wandered off towards the oak tree. Oopsies. Landing, as it turns out, isn't my strong suit. But hey, I found some acorns. Smashing them to bits, I collected the materials to craft a shovel. Perfect for digging up those grubs I had seen earlier. And grubs are useful for making smoothies, which we'll get into later. Yes, bug smoothies. Just go with it. Before leaving, I peeped a red ant, gathered all its juicy info, and then just walked away like nothing happened. With daylight fading, I knew it was time to wrap up day one, so I crafted a weevil shield, which gave me some much needed protection against future threats. And with that, I called it a night. Micro-sized but mighty, it's a tad bit smarter than I was this morning. Well, maybe. As dawn broke on day 2, I woke up to the sight of glistening droplets clinging to the tips of grass blades, shining like tiny gems under the rising sun. It was a beautiful moment, a serene start to what would soon become a day filled with questionable decisions and frantic running around. My first tiny shelter popped up complete with a respawn point and a humble workbench. Not bad for a second day nomad. Feeling confident, I ventured towards the giant oak tree. That's when the spiders appeared, my first real test of bravery. Then, just as I was congratulating myself for keeping a safe distance, an even bigger furry menace loomed into view, the dreaded wolf spider. While I was distracted by my newfound hobby of insect photography, it dawned on me that I had completely forgotten to push the button to trigger the game's story progression. So, like a hero with no sense of direction, I backtracked to the machine and pushed the button, setting off a cutscene and a massive explosion. On my way back to the oak tree to investigate the blast, I encountered a ladybug and peeped it. You're probably going to start seeing a trend here. You see something new, you peep it. However, the moment of calm was quickly followed by what I can only describe as a grub massacre. Yes, I went on an absolute rampage. Every grub that dared to swerve my path met its end. I screamed, "You'll never dig again!" It was therapeutic, really. I then rewarded myself by crafting a canteen, and to top it off, I built a roasting spit. Let me tell you, nothing beats the taste of freshly grilled bug nuggets. The texture, crunchy. The flavor, unidentifiable. viable, but hey, it's better than starving. As dusk crept in, I knew it was finally time to brave the oak lab. Once inside, my inner hoarder took over. Every shelf, drawer, and corner was picked clean. My imaginary pockets were bottomless. Then I stumbled upon a peculiar robot knocked over by the explosion. Whoopsies. My bad. I dusted him off and discovered two things. His name was Burgle and he loved to talk. Like seriously, this robot could run a podcast. While he rambled on, I zoned out and explored a nearby cave. Inside I found a glowing ball of raw science, a cassette tape, and some shiny shards for future weapon upgrades. But of course, greed got the best of me. I couldn't resist jumping in some nearby water to grab even more raw science. Only to realize I might have trapped myself down here. What? Genius move, sir. Genius move. Eventually I realized the only way out was to drop down a ledge right into the soldier ant territory. They were waiting for me, so I ran. Like a lot. Back at my shelter, I took a deep breath and crafted a chest to offload my inventory. Feeling lighter and somewhat more organized, I returned to Burgle, hoping he'd have finally wrapped up his monologue. Spoiler, he hadn't. I pressed X repeatedly while he droned on about the wonders of raw science. By the time he finished, I'd unlocked access to other labs across the yard, which felt both like a blessing and a looming responsibility. I also learned Burgle had side missions to offer, ways to earn more raw science and unlock cool gear. As a bonus, it turns out I'd already completed a bunch of these tasks without even realizing it. Now with the Oak Lab mission behind me, I headed back to my humble shelter, and it was time to call it a night. On day 3, I woke up hungrier than a mosquito at an all-you-can-drink buffet. Breakfast consisted of the finest roasted aphid. But memories of day 2 came flooding back, soldier ants showing no mercy. Today, it was payback time. I brandished my spear with a level of confidence I hadn't yet earned and went in for the kill. But just as the ant's health dwindled, it bolted straight for the 2 snoozing wolf spiders under the tree. Now I may be hungry, but I'm not dumb. No thank you. I watched in frustration as a cowardly ant vanished, and as I turned to leave, another ant ambushed me. Clearly, it was out for revenge on behalf of its friend. But just like its buddy, it ran as soon as things got heated. This time, though, no wolf spiders were there to save it. Victory was mine, or it would have been had the ant not pulled the ultimate disappearing act. One moment it was there, the next it was gone. Shrugging off the annoyance, I pressed on and found a juice box, sweet, hydrated nectar. But right after, a larva decided it was my turn to be the snack. Figuring that it wasn't too big, I stood my ground and it lunged at me, and I managed to block it with my spear before countering with a few good stabs. We danced like that for a bit until, surprise, surprise, it ran. This time, though, I wasn't let it go. I hurled my spear like an Olympic javelin thrower, and with pinpoint accuracy, the larva exploded into a satisfying pile of goo. But the real prize was just a short distance away. A towering thistle plant swarmed by hostile bugs. I climbed up, harvesting every needle I can carry, ready to arm myself with a bow and spiky sprig. From my new vantage point, I spotted a new foe, the bombardier beetle. That would be a challenge, though, for another day. My next stop was a swampy area between the oak tree and the Hedge Lab. There I gathered clay, an essential ingredient for future crafting. I also still needed gnat fuzz to make that bow, so I found some gnats, and the first gnat easily fell to my spear thrust, dropping into the water like a little bug pinata. Soon after, another gnat kindly offered itself up, practically buzzing into my hands, but the rest were onto me, flying high above my reach. Armed with only a spear, I attempted the impossible, hurling it into the air like a hunter. Unsurprisingly, I missed. My aim, it seemed, needed a little bit of work, so after steadying myself, I took a big, deep breath, and I threw yet again. This time, the gnat exploded on impact, its fuzzy little body falling perfectly at my feet. Finally, enough fuzz to craft my bow. Nearby, I made my way to a hidden cave, plunging into the water and swimming through the darkness. On the other side, a beam of light illuminated a 4-leaf clover, granting me the cube to grasp mutation. A touch of luck was exactly what I needed. I harvested more valuable materials, then swam back to the tunnel, discovering a glowing scabby in the process. Feeling successful, I continued exploring and stumbled upon a landmark, the yoked girth head. A sense of accomplishment washed over me. I was progressing, but no good moment less than grounded, and sure enough, my happiness was cut short by the sight of a wolf spider emerging from its den. There was no way I could fight it, so I did what any sensible survivor would do. I ran scared. And fortunately, there was water nearby, so I jumped in, knowing that spiders in the game are hydrophobic cowards. I then made my way over to the entrance of the hedge and took out a larva in the process. I soon discovered the hedge ascent, complete with a research station and some raw science. I decided at this point to shoot down some berries, knowing they'd be crucial for future armor crafting. And now the journey of the hedge was in front of me. After riding a zipline down a tree branch, I found myself in a building where an angry robot awaited. A brawl ensued. The spear wasn't ideal, but I eventually bested the machine and looted the area for raw science and upgrade materials. Pulling a massive lever, I also unlocked the ability to track specific resources. Back outside, I broke open some egg sacs, hoping for some good loot. I did manage to find a stink bug gas sac and plenty of web fiber after dealing with the inevitable spiderlings. More exploration led to another building full of even more raw science tapes and upgrade shards. I fought off more spiderlings, unlocking the cardiofan mutation along the way. By this point, it was late, so I closed my eyes, hoping tomorrow would bring even more success. On day 4, I woke up and set off yet again. The web sacs were next on my agenda. I smashed every single one in sight, hoping for ladybug and stink bug parts, but every now and again I'd glance down at the long drop below. Waiting at the bottom, I noticed an ore weaver looking up at me like I was a tasty pinata about to fall into its web. I made sure to disappoint it. After hopping on a zipline, my ride took me to the Fling Man flying disc, where I was ambushed by a swarm of angry spiderlings. Combat ensued and I realized I wasn't doing too bad. Halfway through the fight, I unlocked my first level of Parry Master. And to celebrate, I chopped down a nearby berry. After cracking open even more web sacks like an overzealous birthday boy, I came across another zipline. Finally though, I arrived at the Hedge Lab. I looted a nearby chest, activated the console, and unlocked the lab's main door. The first room was eerily quiet. Too quiet. I found a workbench, some loot, and a code for the door that held the lab's super chip. Then I entered a room with a delightful scene, half-grown spiders battling robots. They weren't spiderlings, but they weren't full-blown nightmares either. I figured I had a shot. My first tactic? Isolate the threats. I lured a robot over for a one-on-one duel. After I defeated it, I peeped its corpse to assert my dominance. You know, just so the others knew who was the boss. Deeper into the room, I found the other robot had just finished taking care of one of the Orb Weaver Juniors. I couldn't let it steal my thunder though, so I jumped in and dealt the final blow on the remaining spider. Sorry robot, no glory for you today. So back on task, I hit another zipline that took me to new territory, more science, more loot, and another code. I then found a third piece of the code, then came across a milk muller, a handy little collectible that I would use to buff my stats later. Navigating through even more of the hedge tunnels and precarious branches, I found the fourth and final code. A quick stop along the way netted me some more raw science and an aphid figurine, which unlocked the Rascal Rogue mutation. With all codes in hand, I made my way back to the start of the lab and entered the office, finally unlocking the door to the coveted super chip. There was one last thing though, a secret I couldn't leave the hedge without. I made my way back to the top of the lab, however this time I took a side path and worked my way up some branches where a dangerous walk led me to one final pond. Inside, 500 raw science and the recipe to summon the brood mother herself. At this point, the hedge was cleared and it was getting late. I set up a quick lean-to on a tree branch, trying not to think too hard about what would happen if I rolled over in my sleep. The next morning I leapt out of bed. Thank goodness I was finally free from that creepy lab. As I landed down below, I spotted a ladybug and it hit me. It was time for an armor upgrade. Let's just say she didn't stand a chance. Sorry, Ladybug, it's nothing personal. Then I noticed a pesky mosquito buzzing around the bird bath, clearly up to no good. I peeped at it, adding to my impressive collection of creepy crawly knowledge. With my new intel locked in, I headed back to the hedge entrance, spending the rest of the day picking up all the berries I had knocked down the day before, and of course I made sure to collect all my arrows as well. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I realized I was too wired to sleep after my late night escapades in the hedge lab, so I decided I would make my trip home. On the way back, I took out a few larvae for good measure and peeped a water flea. But when I totally spaced on peeping the gnats yesterday, so I added another creature card to my collection. I made it home without any concerns and relocated my gear to the back of the juice box. Now came the hardest part, waiting an hour to sleep. The only thought keeping me sane was the glorious image of my future ladybug armor. Finally, when the time came, I sank into my cozy bed dreaming of my stylish new look. So on day 6, I woke up and made my way to the Oak Lab. There, I scanned my shiny new goodies, all in the name of brain power. Next up, I said hi to Burgle and handed over the latest chip like I was delivering pizza. I then splurged on some snazzy upgrades, things like ziplines, cool structures, and a torch upgrade that promised to light up my life. Realizing that I've been putting off base building longer than my last New Year's resolution, I finally decided it was time to invest in a base. I started off by building a couple of sap collectors because nothing screams I'm a responsible teenager like having something else do all the work for me. Just when I thought I was getting my act together, I spotted another ladybug. I knew her lady parts... body parts would bring us one step closer to feeling safe. I was feeling like a superhero, until I wasn't. Just as I was celebrating my ladybug victory, a stink bug leapt at me like it had a personal vendetta against me. My health bar was hanging by a thread, so I ran faster than a kid who spotted the ice cream truck. Then the stink bug took a miscalculated jump and, clearly embarrassed, swaggered off like a defeated villain. But fueled by a mix of adrenaline and pride, I whipped up my bow and shot him right in the butt. Yep, not my finest hour. He promptly turned around and body slammed me like he was a professional linebacker. Honestly, I totally deserved it. After questioning my life choices, I realized it was time to get back to my true calling, building. I crafted a plank pallet and started chopping grass and unlocked the cardio fan level 2 in the process. That's right, folks, I was making gains. The rest of my day was spent chopping and building until I had a cozy little enclosure behind the juice box. And with that, I called it a night. The morning kicked off with me crafting my very first pair of aphid slippers. They may not be the best defense, but let's be honest, when you're that fast, who really needs it? I then decided it was time to take on my first big spider. I spotted an orb weaver, then stealthily lured it away from the snoozing wolf spider. Spoiler alert, I won! Another quest complete and more raw science for the collection. Next on my agenda, ladybug armor. But to finish crafting it, I needed flower petals. So I headed on over to the nearest flower patch where I gathered petals like a kid in a candy store. Until an orb weaver jr. caught me red-handed in his flower stash. Let's just say it didn't live long enough to call mom over. Oh, and I finally crafted my first spinning wheel so I could get ready to whip up some zip lines as soon as I possibly could. Then it was time for another duel with an orb weaver. By the end, I was so skilled I unlocked Parry Master level 3. I felt like a Jedi with a spiky sprig, ready to take on the galaxy. After scanning more items, I raised the flag near the oak tree and got more raw science. I also built an upgrade station and leveled up my ladybug armor to level 4. As the day wound down, I made a beeline for the water. There was an arrow floating there, taunting me every time I walked past. I may have missed an aphid once or twice. Don't judge, okay? I dove in and retrieved it and then proceeded to peep a tadpole, which I'm pretty sure was also judging me. Finally, I decided it was time for one last battle today. I picked a fight with an orb weaver family and felt like a champion until I was ambushed by a mosquito, but I managed to emerge victorious, plucking its body clean like it was a prize turkey at Thanksgiving. Now, with a sack full of new bug parts and a heart full of triumph, I finally called it a night. I rolled out of bed this morning and thought, why not start making smoothies? So I crafted my first smoothie station, and honestly, I was getting kind of tired of fried aphid and crunchy weevils. Feeling pretty pumped after my epic fight the night before, I returned to the stumps to collect more web fiber from those pesky orb weavers. However, just when I thought I could take on the world, I spotted a pair of bombardier beetles. I thought, what's the worst that could happen? Real bad stuff. A whole lot. But I was furious. Who did these beetles think they were, pulling that dirty double team nonsense? It was time for a rematch. I went back, channeled my inner ninja, and managed to separate the dynamic duo. One-on-one duels ensued, and after some epically clumsy fighting, I claimed their body parts as trophies. Next, I decided to lure over a mosquito, and of course, you know how that went. I then also stumbled upon Squirt's carton, and then unlocked the first level of Natural Explorer. I then crafted a few dew collectors, a water container, and upgraded my pebblet axe to the inset axe. Then I got to work. I crafted 2 stem pallets and started hacking away at those tier 2 stems nearby. I spent the rest of the day constructing a massive bridge because, let's be real, moving my base to the pagoda is the ultimate dream. And if I want to reach it, I need to do a whole ton of building. And that is how I ended my night. Waking up, I spent the entire morning and early afternoon working on the bridge. It was a tedious chop grass, load up pallet, carry wood, and then surprise, repeat the cycle over and over again kind of process. Eventually though, boredom hit me like a ton of bricks, so I decided it was time for an adventure. First up, bee peepin'. Then I channeled my inner exterminator. I took out a bombardier beetle. I had a feeling I would need more of their parts for some future crafting. Feeling productive, I raised a flag for some sweet raw science. After my not so pleasant chat with the ladybug, I decided to farm some clay because, you know, zip lines don't build themselves. At this point, my wanderings led me all the way back to the hedge where I proceeded to take out 3 more beetles and scan some new stuff. Honestly, I was starting to feel like a walk-in science lab. With all the brain power I was flexing. Einstein better watch out. And as the sun began to set, I crafted a temporary shelter and drifted off to sleep. This morning, I embarked on my glorious trek back to the base. As I worked my way through the grass, I channeled my inner martial artist and delivered some serious smackdowns to a few unfortunate mites. But the day took a turn when I spotted a stink bug. It clearly took my earlier triumph as a personal insult, and in a moment of pure audacity, leaped at me while still grappling with some of its smaller buddies. I barely escaped with my life. Upon my return to the base, I decided it was time for some advancement, so I whipped up 2 jerky racks so I could craft some berry leather. I desperately needed berry leather for a tier 2 hammer, which was essential for extracted upgrades from those mystical milk molars. With a tier 2 hammer on my mind, I realized I needed stink bug parts, not just for my hammer, but also for my gas mask. So I stocked up on snacks and arrows and set off on a stink bug hunting expedition. It was time for some payback. Almost immediately, disaster struck. The stink bug's poison attack hit harder than a toddler with a tantrum. Then, like a scene from an action movie, we reached the juice box and the bug got stuck. I unloaded a barrage of arrows into the smelly menace until it was finally over, granting me that glorious pile of bug parts and over 500 bonus raw science for completing a quest. With my spoils in my hand, I scurried back to my base to recuperate, but I still needed more bug parts. So I lured over yet another stink bug. This time I cleverly utilized a can near my base to create some much needed distance. Things were looking pretty bleak again near the end. One more hit from that toxic critter and I was toast. But just as it seemed I was doomed, the most bizarre thing happened.
Huh?
The stink bug's attack should have been my demise, but instead, it just dropped dead. I have no idea what cosmic forces were at play, but I was grateful. I was not about to question this strange divine intervention. After retrieving my arrows, I returned to base for a well-deserved snack. Feeling adventurous, I crafted one of my favorite weapons, the mosquito needle. Not only is it stylish, but its healing properties are pure magic. I then crafted my tier 2 hammer and my gas mask. I also upgraded my needle to level 4 and completed my ladybug armor set. To top it all off, I smashed my very first milk molar. I then spent the rest of the day doing some much needed chores around the base. I woke up the next morning feeling more alive than ever. First things first though, I marched on over to my orb weaver neighbors. These guys have been squatting next to my base like they owned the place. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I decimated their entire family. It was brutal. I also took the tooth they were guarding as a trophy and grabbed some flower petals for souvenirs. Feeling invincible, I turned my attention to base building, and after some quality time chopping down grass like a true yard warrior, I unlocked Grass Master level 1. I stood there basking in my newfound power over vegetation. I could practically hear the grass whispering in fear. With my confidence peaking, I decided it was time to revisit the old ant hill. I still needed more resources, and the soldier ants, they were downright rude last time. But this time, I was prepared. I destroyed their sad little colony, took the only things they cherished in life, and managed to unlock the Cardiofen level 3 while I started my dominance. Then, after leaving that old ant hill, I swung by the Oak Lab to scan some more items. Oh, and I picked up a Mega Milk Bowler. Tiny Pete was getting more buff by the minute. I then had a quick chat with Burkle who reminded me I had a dream. Feeling accomplished and only slightly guilty of the chaos I caused today, I headed home, flopped into my bed, and called it a night. On day 12, I woke up feeling adventurous, so I decided to head over to one of the lasers. Along the way, I got into a street ball with the red ant and unlocked the Ant Annihilator mutation. I then challenged 3 orb weavers and a ladybug to a full-on fight all at once. Now you may be wondering, why was I still using the spiky sprig instead of my trusty mosquito needle? Honestly, your guess is as good as mine. Maybe I just like the challenge of slapping things with a glorified toothpick, or maybe I just wasn't entirely awake. I mean, I know when we walked into a 1v4. That should tell you everything. I did emerge victorious though, and then I found some raw science and a feather nearby. Yay, bird dandruff. I then returned to the laser with the mites, and I snagged some tier 2 upgrade materials and more raw science. Then finally, I arrived at my destination. I had arrived at the Red Ant Hill, and at this point I was rocking the full red ant armor. Or so I thought. Turns out I forgot to wear my red ant pants, and the ants were not happy about my free-legged intrusion. Long story short, I wiped out half their colony. Oops, my bad guys. After putting on the ant pants, I looted the cave like a pro, grabbed more raw science, and unlocked the rock cracker mutation. Also snagged the red ant chip and some fresh mint. I then proceeded to eat all the mint because my inventory was full. I convinced myself that I was just fast-tracking the fresh defense mutation, which I know I was gonna need later. With my pockets and my stomach full, I decided it was time to visit the queen, or more accurately, to go steal her children. I snagged 3 red ant eggs and ran for my life. After scanning the eggs to figure out how to turn these innocent kids into explosives, I know, I'm terrible, I headed to the Haze. I fought an infected larva, and wow, do those guys pack a punch. But I came prepared with healing, and I won the battle and took home some fungal growth. With just enough materials, I crafted 2 bombs, and as for the 3rd ant child, well, I threw it on the ground and wished it a bright future. Cue Parenting 101. At this point, though, it was getting late, so I headed home and had no unfortunate encounters, and then I called it a night. Day 12 was an epic roller coaster of survival, snack theft, and pure unbridled vengeance. So I kick off the day like any sensible survivor would, a chore marathon around the base. Water, check. Berry leather, silk rope, and a borderline OCD organization of every scrap I own. Double check. But crisis strikes. I realize I'm low on food, so I suit up for a supply run. All's well until I crush a weevil and apparently catch a side eye of a nearby orb weaver. Now I'm no mind reader, but that spider's glare screamed, "You wanna go?" A few swings later, I'm on top, the orb weaver is down, and my dinner situation is finally back on track. Or so I thought. Back at base, I'm just about to cook up my hard-earned meal when I spot this thieving little red ant sneaking up on my food.
Oh, hell no!
It was personal now. I didn't hesitate. I squashed that ant flat. Apparently the game itself saw fit to acknowledge my descent into barbarity by awarding me with the barbarian mutation. Yeah, the game knows I've gone feral. Then as I go to leave, I open my door only to walk into an ambush. Another red ant is there waiting with murder in its beady little eyes. Bam! Down it goes. But wait, 2 more are coming in hot, clearly out for revenge. Are these the same ants who slipped away back on day 2? Are they all back with a vengeance? Doesn't really matter. I send them all to the great ant colony in the sky. By now, I'm fed up with every living creature that thinks it can just mosey on over and mess with me. So I head to the oak tree, ready to go toe-to-toe with the biggest baddie around, the wolf spider. With gas arrows at the ready, I positioned myself just out of its reach, look in its deadly, soulless eyes, and let loose a fury of arrows. It's a toxic cloud of pure vengeance until finally the beast collapses. My reward? 600 raw science and a fancy new mutation to power me up even more. Oh, and a milk molar for my troubles. But the carnage doesn't stop there. Oh no. I smash a couple of weevils, then spot 3 mosquitoes buzzing nearby. Poke, poke, poke. Down they go. Then I charge up to the nearest orbeavers and take them down, barely even questioning if this is cruelty or justice. There's no difference at this point. I also stumbled across the mega milk molar, guzzle its existence, and crush a bombardier beetle just for good measure. Finally, back at base, I use my spoils from the wolf spider to craft a sweet tier 2 bow, pump it up to level 3, and call it a night. On day 13, I dove headfirst into the longest day of building ever. Now let me just set this scene for you. I've got this grand vision for a bridge, 2 planks wide, all the way across the pagoda. Sounds reasonable, right? Wrong. What ensues is a day-long spiral into madness. I'm chopping grass, stacking planks, loading up my little pallet, and hauling it all back and forth, over and over and over again. I kept at it, building inch by inch, piece by piece. It's not exciting. It's not fun. It was just a bridge all day long. And by nightfall, I could barely see straight, but I was committed. So with one last look at my barely there masterpiece, I called it a night and trudged off to bed, praying that tomorrow would involve fewer planks and a whole lot more sanity. On day 14, I woke up ready to finish tackling that bridge. Now, in real life, fast forward to late afternoon, at this point, I was running on fumes. And then it happened. In the ultimate, I'm so tired I could fall over moment, I did just that. I slipped right off into the water below. Cue the orb weavers. I scrambled up onto the shore, and they were waiting. But hey, I was wide awake now. So I dusted myself off and kept building, and with that, the bridge was finally finished. I had a new home, and I celebrated by scanning absolutely everything, and now I had a personal library to increase and grow my brain power. But then reality set in. The building might have been over, but the moving was just beginning. I looked at all my belongings, took a deep breath, and started the labor of love that is hauling every single item across to my new place. By the time I'd officially moved over and set up shop, I was ready to pass out. And with that, I called it a night. On day 15, apparently day 15 just didn't happen. I'm guessing somehow in the process of this grand organizational project, I managed to lose the footage. So just imagine me moving stacks of grass and a whole lot of inventory menus as I created a storage system at my base, because that's exactly what happened. Oh, and I built my first zip line from the tree stumps to my base to make getting planks easier. On day 16, I set out on an adventure. First stop, the sacred bathroom scale. This was all about hunting down some mushrooms. Who doesn't love mushrooms? After gathering my fungi, it was time for dessert. I raided a mint stash like a kid on Halloween and munched until I unlocked Fresh Defense level 3. Most people would have called it a day. Sun was setting after all, but I'd been up all night moving junk around and I still couldn't sleep. So what did I do? Did I play it safe? Absolutely not. I decided, let's go check out the haze. Armed with my gas mask, I charged into the haze zone fearless. Then, just as I'm feeling like the king of the haze, an infected mite crawls up to try and provoke me. So naturally I take it out. Then 3 more infected might show up, but I finished them all off like the bug-slaying champion I'd become. I built a cozy little lean-to right there on top of the mite corpses, and I laid down for a well-earned sleep. Either I'd hunt them in the afterlife, or their dead corpses would hopefully at least scare everything else away in the area. Day 17, I woke up pumped and ready for adventure. But then, out of nowhere, comes this infected gnat. He was still harmless, just 10 times more annoying, so I put him out of his misery, and after that, I scored some free candy bars. Then I set off and decided to scale this giant rake. That's when I peeped a couple of other infected critters, a ladybug, and a larva, both looking like they'd seen better days. I finally gathered my bearings and hopped down, only to find myself getting chased by an infected weevil. And well, it just blew itself up, right there. Boom! I realized in that instant that I was actually helping these poor little weevils by butchering them for food. I mean, exploding on sight? That's a brutal way to go. Anyway, I found a piece of gum that could plug the haze, so I got all set up to blow it up. Only remember that my bombs weren't sticky. Yeah, I definitely had a life's choices moment there, and that's when I saw it. The Haze Lab, my new destination. I hopped down, swaggered over to the door, only to find it guarded by another infected gnat. He tried to stop me, but I had other plans, so he fell to the ground and the problem was solved. Then I just needed to blow the door up. Fortunately, I still had a baby a bomb, so I used it and boom, the door was open. Inside I found some loot, another cryptic note, and a station with some brain boosted knowledge. Then I wandered in the next room and here comes a robot charging at me. I quickly pulled out my trusty club and after a quick scuffle, the robot was down. The next room though was absolutely terrifying, unlike anything you've ever seen. It was kind of sad and scary all at the same time. The infected weevils charged at me and blowing up left and right. I basically just would lure one out, let it blow itself up in front of its friends, collect its parts, and then rinse and repeat until the room was clear. Finally safe, I hacked down the plants and then found some raw science hidden in the mess. Then the next room offered even more treasures and a lever that I had to pull. After a bit more exploring, I found the door that I unlocked, and there it was. The ugliest ladybug I had ever seen. She really had let herself go. She looked mad, and it's probably because her friends had been telling her horror stories about me. It also probably didn't help that I was literally wearing her family for clothes at this point. But ladybugs were old news by now, so I casually started sorting my inventory because it was full and I wanted to pick up the loot that was on the ground. Yeah, that was a big mistake. The next thing I knew, explosions were absolutely everywhere. My health bar was at a sliver. I healed up, but she summoned a whole mob of infected groupies and it was utter chaos. Then, just as I thought I'd regain control, I looked down, standing directly over an explosive. I tried to block it with my spiky sprig, but that just obscured my view of yet another explosive. Yeah, the fat ladybug was singing tonight. I respawned back at the kit case and I wasn't even mad. I was just shocked. This was all my fault for getting too cocky. I went back, drank the nectar of the gods, or as most people know it, water, and went back into the ring with the ladybug. This time though, it was different. I barely took any damage, dodging explosions left and right as if I was born to fight this creature. And then I used my spiky sprig to make her explode. You know, like she died. That's what I'm referring to. Then I had to dispatch the infected ankle biters, and soon after I finally reached the last room of the lab. I found more bombs, the Haze super chip, and some free raw science. But by now it was dark, so I climbed to the top of the Haze container, hoping for a decent vantage point, and I raised the flag for some extra raw science. Fortunately, I got home safe. On day 18, I popped over to have a chat with Burgle, handing him both the Red Ant chip and the Haze Lab super chip. Then I plugged in my duper disc and immediately realized that something was off. Turns out I'd only upgraded it once. I totally spaced on grabbing the first disc from the Hedge Lab. Whoopsies. I was gonna have to go back and get that later. I then made the trek back to my base, grabbed a quick snack, and then remembered I spotted a shiny golden tooth behind my base. Naturally, I ran over and slurped up that upgrade like it was a free sample at a store. But wait, there's more. I remembered there was another shiny upgrade nearby. The catch, it was guarded by 2 wolf spiders. No biggie, right? I wasn't about to let a couple of creepy crawlies ruin my day, so I headed back to base, stocked up on supplies, and made my way back to the oak tree. I whipped out a gas arrow and took a shot at one of the spiders below the tree. What followed wasn't exactly a walk in the park, but it wasn't the worst fight either. My mosquito needle was doing work. Every time the spider poisoned me, I was healing up. And after a couple of well-placed final jabs, the spider took its last breath. But here's the thing. I realized after that I'd done the entire fight with the wrong mutations on, so I was taking full poison damage. Yeah, brilliant me. But hey, that meant the next fight should be a breeze, right? And it was. I marched right back to the tree, armed with the right mutations, and started poking the next wolf spider with my needle. This fight was significantly faster, and then the spider collapsed there at my feet. Afterwards, I grabbed some shiny upgrade rocks that it was guarded and blew up a nearby rock with a bomb to uncover a golden hidden tooth. By this point, it was getting late, so I made my way home, did a few chores, and finally called it a night. On day 19, the neighborhood was looking a little too lively, so I decided to take matters into my own hand and clean up the place. First, I went on a snack run gathering some valuable food. Then I saw a mosquito minding its business, so naturally I took it out for existing. I wasn't done yet though, oh no. Next up, I went full bug annihilator mode and obliterated some spiders because, honestly, who doesn't hate spiders? After dispatching the local pest, I casually snatched 100 raw science that they had had in their family for generations. I was feeling pretty unstoppable, so I moved on to the bombardier beetles. 1, 2, 3. Each one fell faster than the last. I was basically stockpiling bug parts at this point. Not even the ants were safe. I then cracked open a few grubs, squashed an annoying larva, and scored some upgrade rocks and a milk muller. I was living the dream. As dusk approached, I started to head home, but then something new emerged. I stumbled upon a firefly. I hadn't seen one in this playthrough, so I thought, why not? I picked a fight, and surprise, surprise, I won without breaking a sweat. I then looted its glowing remains for some treasure, but then there was another firefly, and then a third. And then I got jumped by a firefly and a mosquito teaming up like some kind of bug alliance. But I wasn't worried. Took out the mosquito and unlocked Blade Master level 1. Then I went back to my firefly rampage. 4th firefly, done. Fifth firefly? You guessed it, destroyed. By the time I finished, I felt like I'd wiped out an entire ecosystem. I then made my way home, and after that little bug stomp, I figured it was time to call it a night.